All right. This is a pretty shitty video to make, but I'm going to end up making it anyways. I've had a decent amount of people come into my stream and kind of ask me why I'm not playing Moonkin as much on stream or why I'm playing other specs on the beta a lot and what I'm going to main in War Within. And I just kind of want to point to this video and be like, this is what I'm playing in the War Within. This is what I'm going to be maining. This is just going to, in general, be my direction moving forward in the War Within. And kind of talk about the reasons that I'm not going to be maining Moonkin in Season 1 of the War Within. And potentially the future. Obviously, there's things that are subject to change, but we don't really know how things are going to land. What I will say is that there are a couple reasons that I'm not going to be maining Moonkin, at least for Season 1 of the War Within. It comes down to two primary reasons. First and foremost is that it's unfun, and secondly is that it's undertuned. If one of those was probably true, and it wasn't both of them, I would probably suck it up and get over it. But fact of the matter is, the spec is just very unfun and undertuned. You can kind of cope about how much damage they're doing or not, but I'm just going to level with you guys. The spec fucking sucks damage-wise. It can do competitive damage in very specific moments with Celestial Alignment and Orbital Strike in very specific moments for AoE. But just in general, it's not competitive on AoE, spread AoE, burst AoE, stacked AoE, any single target profile, burst single target, any of that shit. It's not competitive on any of it. It's there are specific spots where it can do competitive damage, but in the long term, it's not going to be doing competitive damage. Now, there are some specific things that it can be good for. You know, if it, God forbid, if you want to play it in Raid and have Balance Druid be your Mark of the Wild bringer, it's fine. I have a strong suspicion that it is the second best damage dealer for bringing Mark of the Wild, as a bunch of people that I know that are rating in high and level guilds are preparing Feral as the damage version, and I think it is in general worse than Guardian and Resto Druid if you're looking to just like slot in other options, because whenever you slot in that damage dealer, obviously damage is the most important thing that they possibly can be doing. Additionally, looking at, you know, just some logs, I don't want to just like completely just be talking out of my ass, but if you look at some logs, if we take a look at Silken Court, Moonkin fucking sucks, which is a 2-target spread cleave fight, by the way. If you take a look at Nexus Priestess, which is a pure single target fight, Moonkin fucking sucks. I mean, just whenever you think of fights that really work well for balance, you think of fights like Silken Court that are spread 2-target cleave that have beetles that spawn. However, Balance Druid's like the way that it does damage right now, a lot of your damage is in your builders and not necessarily your spenders, and I'm going to talk about playstyle in a second, but this really limits its ability to be good on fights like this. And with it being as undertuned as it currently appears on the beta, it's just kind of a situation where I don't think that there's any real way that I will be able to play it. For me, it's one of those things that I can play a bunch of other casters at a decently high level, so I'm not necessarily going to force myself to play bad stuff. I also kind of generally go through this thought process, and I don't think it's for everybody, but I do think it's kind of important to kind of explain my thought process. I think that playing the game and getting invited to groups is more important to me than playing necessarily the specialization that I want to do. Waiting in a capital city, playing the spec that I want, is less important than actively playing the game. Now, obviously, if the game was perfectly balanced, I would be able to do both, but it's not. And there's also this stigma where player perception on how good or bad stuff is actually very important. And, you know, I think that this is arguably more important for people who are pugging via LFG, because the meta, whenever you're looking at players and you're like in a group in LFG and you sign up to a group, the only thing that players see is your item level, what spec and class you play, and then like your Raider IO score. And they don't really see anything beyond that. So, of course, if you have 3000 IO and then something that's a meta spec with 3000 IO also signs up, they're going to take them over you. And that just is the truth. And it's less true for high-end players, but you're not going to get away with playing something that's like really bad. And I think that for me, it's one of those things that like, I'm just going to play something that's good in the long term, and it's looking to be Aug Evoker. I think that's the most likely candidate, although I'm willing to play other OP shit. Basically any caster I'll play, just whatever. So yeah, tuning definitely in the dumps. This could be fixed, but even if it gets fixed, I think that tuning is actually the smallest problem that I have with balance right now, which is concerning because it is the worst tune spec in the game. I started writing a Balance Druid and War Within hero talent thing, and there's some opinion pieces on it. Obviously, this is not like completely released yet, but whenever I started writing about how I felt about Balance Druid and War Within, this really started to hit home. I fucking hate dooming about the spec. I think it's not very fun to just be in like a negative mindset permanently talking about all of the things that you find unfun. But let's just talk about it for a second, because I think that it's kind of important to add context of why I'm having these issues with Balance Druid. First and foremost, the hero talents suck. I don't really have a good way of sugarcoating this. I think that the Lunes Chosen is probably the more fun of hero talents because of Lunation, but right now you're talenting into Lunar Calling, and just in general, the playstyle of how Balance plays as a whole is not very fun, and a Lunes Chosen doesn't fix this. Keeper of the Grove is... I don't think that they could have designed a more counterintuitive hero talent tree that doesn't work with things that Balance wants to do. It forces you to end up playing like Force of Nature treants, where you have to talent stuff that's at the top of the tree, and so you end up losing points that are towards your capstone level, because like if you ever want to talent into AoE or talent into Starfall, you end up having to talent into Force of Nature, which then you just don't have enough points for, and it's like really, really cringe. But yeah, I think that both of these hero talents are not very fun. I think worst case scenario, they're really cringe and against the grain of how you want to play with Moonkin. Best case scenario, other classes have better and cooler and more well-designed hero talents, and that just is fact of the matter. Secondly, the damage breakdown and where you're doing damage contribution from is really cringe, in my opinion. So a lot of your damage is in Starfire and Fury of Elune, particularly in like Boundless Moonlight. So it's in the Lunes Chosen tree, so this kind of makes sense. But look at how little percentage of your damage is your spenders. On top of that, the spec is very one-dimensional. I was talking with one of the lead content people for the guides whenever we do Wowhead. We were just kind of talking about the rotation, and he asked me point blank, is your spec really that one-dimensional? Because I was like, dude, I don't think I even need more than like 5 or 6 lines to really explain this at like a base level. And the answer was truly yes. The spec is incredibly one-dimensional. You can really break up the spec into 3 main categories of maintain your dots, don't cap Astral Power, press your fillers, and then you're going to be well off. Obviously, it's a bit more dynamic than that in some spots, but it really feels like you're pressing like one button and like all of your damage is baked into like Starfire hard casting, which is not great. The last thing I think is like the deletion of Arcanic Pulsar, and I think that this is like... What I will say is I think that removing Arcanic Pulsar makes sense if Blizzard went and did what they said that they were going to do by adding more interesting gameplay loops and adding more talents that made sense and adding a lot of like different builds and different stuff that you could actually do with your talents. But frankly, Blizzard didn't. And so we just got Arcanic Pulsar removed and we got left kind of in the dust. I think that, and I wrote it here, Pulsar getting deleted has removed a lot of fun out of the spec. I do think that Pulsar could be a problematic balancing node, but the way that Blizzard has handled this has been unfortunate. Pretty much every single Eclipse interaction had something to do with Pulsar or got boosted by it, and then additionally building towards that Pulsar over the course of an encounter felt like you were actively trying to do something with the spec. Ripping Pulsar out of the kit and replacing with about 15% damage is not a way to improve the spec. I think that it made the spec just a lot less fun to play as a whole, to the point where I'm just actively not having a lot of fun whenever I'm playing it, and I notice that I'm not enjoying it. And it's just unfortunate because I actually really want to play Balance, but Blizzard doesn't necessarily want me to play Balance, so I don't really know what to do here. I'm kind of like in limbo where the playstyle is just like one of the least fun playstyles I've had in a while. I think that the only one that rivals it in terms of less fun was like BFA, and I thought that one was complete dog shit too. But yeah, I just didn't think in general it's like a combination of being the worst tune spec in the game and being incredibly unfun. And I think that whenever you have those two combinations of things, it's not going to be something that I'm going to be playing. All right, I'm back for round 2. I'm not actually done bitching. Hold on, I have one more thing to bitch about. The class tree. It is awful. Somehow, they've reworked it 3 times. It's still just as bad as it always has been. And it comes down to one simple fact. You end up putting points into shit that you don't press. If you ever have to talent into Decurse, it is like the worst shit ever, and you end up taking points out of like Innervate Nature's Vigil. For some reason, to get good nodes in the tree, I put points into Instincts of the Claw. This affects 0 of my abilities that I've I've ever pressed. I also end up putting points to Einfer. Again, something that I never press. I put points into Soothe, a button that is very seldomly pressed. Whenever it's pressed, I would like to be able to talent it. However, I don't press it that often. Additionally, I'll put points into goddamn Rejuvenation, and that also doesn't work. And all of the Druid specs have the exact same issue, where they end up talenting a bunch of points into stuff that they've never taken or they don't even press, and no other spec or no other class has this issue, only Druid for some reason, and the class tree sucks. Blizzard should have fixed it like 3 times whenever they tried to fix it every single time, and somehow it's still just not fixed. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm still leveling my Druid. I'm still going to maintain my Druid. I'm probably still going to play Balance on occasion. I think it's one of those things that I'm still going to play it sometimes, but I'm going to be playing my Aug Evoker almost exclusively in Season 1 and almost exclusively in competitive content in Season 1 because, frankly, just Aug is very good in M+, and that's my primary source of content right now. There is a situation where, like, if I had to raid, I would probably just be sitting on the bench perma as Moonkin or be logging on Feral to be that Mark of the Wildbringer. One of the two of those would happen. But since I'm no longer raiding, I have no reason to ride the bench in a guild playing a spec that I'm not finding fun and is very undertuned. Yeah. But yeah, that's basically it. Those are basically the reasons that I'm not going to be playing Moonkin a ton in Season 1. Hope it doesn't affect my content too much. Hope people don't end up hating it. I'm still going to be writing the Balance Druid guide for Wowhead. I'm still going to be playing the spec like kind of casually. I'm still going to be doing some of the theory crafting for it and, like, you know, running sims and stuff like that. But I think in terms of like actively playing it a ton in Season 1, that's probably not going to happen. Anyhow, that's going to be it. Conclusion of the video. Sorry if it makes you upset. Sorry if you're going to be playing Balance Druid. Here's the thing. If you want to play Balance Druid and you've been playing Balance Druid for 10 years, continue to play it. I don't think that anything that I say necessarily should change your mind. I'm just giving you my reasons for why I'm not going to be playing it. So that's it. All right. GG's. Goodbye.